Thank you very much, Matt. Didn't know my talk was actually going to get renamed Entertain People for 45 minutes before they run off to beer. So I'm going to do the best that I can and keep everyone energized and excited, and then we're all going to go party. So we're really all looking forward to it. As Matt introduced, I'm Cory von Wallenstein from Dyn Inc., and really this is a tale of growth. It's a tale of growth and innovation and how we've stayed nimble, innovative, and competitive as our company has gotten much, much larger, all thanks to Confluence. Or at least mostly thanks to Confluence. So what are we going to discuss today? Quick, where's the relevancy? A little bit of intro to Dyn and what may or may not be relevant for you guys. And then kind of our pain and challenges for growth that we've run into being a bootstrap company. The real meat of my presentation, though, is going to be the product roadmap dashboard. This is something that we've built in Confluence using a lot of plugins that has really aligned a lot of what we do in the organization. We're going to go through 2 examples of how it's used, and then we're going to dive under the hood, and I'm going to show you how it was built. And one thing that I've been asked to make very, very clear is that all the code that I have that made this possible, all of the templates, all of the plugins you need to grab, I have a link at the end of the presentation that'll take you to a page, and everything is right there. So you don't need to scribble notes and write down little macro curly braces in the margins of your notebooks, because that's hard. We'll have everything there. So where's the relevancy? Well, Dyn Inc. is a managed DNS and email provider. It's really infrastructure as a service for a lot of internet companies. We power folks like Twitter, Zappos, CNBC, Quora, and over 1,000 other web enterprises. Folks may know us as Dyn DNS. We've been around under that name for 12 years. We've been in the enterprise space for about 5 now. And over the last 6 months, we've doubled in size to now 80 employees. And it's been entirely self-funded. We have no outside funding. And Confluence has really been a key driver in how we can stay aligned and keep moving everyone forward. And the challenges include, we have many, many platforms. 12 years of growing a business. There's a lot of stuff that we threw against the wall, and some of it stuck really, really well. And some of it didn't. But the stuff that was in the middle and stuck kind of okay, there were some users on it, that really kind of slowed us down because they weren't smashing successes, nor were they clear failures. But over time, we've just built up this archive of lots and lots and lots of applications and platforms, and it's made it very difficult for us to stay fast-paced and agile. And so that's been one thing we've had to combat. And it's really about managing that success, staying nimble and staying competitive. But the way I really like to explain it is by going back to middle school and talking about vectors. Oh boy. So imagine a vector as a direction that you want to take your company, right? And the way that vector is pointing is where you want your company to go, right? It's your corporate strategy. And how long that vector is how many resources you're applying in that direction. And when you're just getting started, you have one vector in one direction and you're kicking ass, right? There's nothing in your way. There's no overhead, there's no complications, no nothing. When you go to add a second team, in a perfect world, or maybe it's an individual, but in a perfect world, you'd be going twice as fast in the direction that you want to go. But we all know that's not reality. We go maybe 1.8 in the direction we want to go. There's some overhead in there for adding on an additional team and trying to keep everyone aligned and going the same direction. The trouble for us is after 12 years, we've looked like this, where we have so many different initiatives and so many different platforms and so many different teams working on in so many different things, it's very, very hard to get an alignment of the company to actually go anywhere, to move the company forward. We've just been kind of existing and sprawling out. So it's really these multiple innovation initiatives combined with bubble-up management, right? Just kind of bottom-up self-direction for where everyone wants to go kind of led us to where we are today, or at least where we were last year. Before we started this effort. And if you think about some of the departmental challenges in staying nimble and innovative and competitive, and you start thinking about the collaboration problems that you have between groups, think about the departmental challenges. What prevents a marketing team from really working with an engineering team to stay nimble? People want to know where things are, and engineers are going to say, hey, just go look in Jira. I already wrote it in there. I don't need to tell you verbally. It's in there. Just go look for it yourself. So if your coffee cup said pound include coffee.h, that might be what you said. But if you're in marketing, you're constantly wondering, why isn't it done yet? So if you had a picture of Don Draper on your coffee mug, you might be hammering the engineers for when's it going to launch? When's it going to launch? When are we going to have this new feature that's going to go out into the field? For a product person like myself, when I first got started doing this job, a mentor of mine told me that being a product manager is like having 100 children on Christmas morning and only one gift under the tree. And no matter what, you're going to leave 99 people disappointed that their feature didn't get into the product, right? And one person's going to be happy. And that's a very, very difficult departmental thing to try to interact with the rest of the organization and overcome that phenomenon. For an operations team, they need to be in the know with where the company is going, the direction we want to go, and they contribute a lot towards getting us there, but they always seem to be the last to know. They're never involved in the discussion of the strategy. It's just, why isn't that done yet? And that's really not a very productive conversation to have with your operations team members. Sales organizations, right? They're going to close the deal no matter what. Whatever they can sell, whoever they can sell it to, they're going after that. And keeping them aligned with the rest of the corporate strategy becomes a bit challenging. Support wants to pass the feedback of the customer along. Not really. They just want to tell the customer to kind of go away. How can you change that attitude? How can you get support folks working alongside engineers and marketers to really deliver a solid user experience, a solid customer experience for our paying customers? And then finally, an executive just wants to know, what's everyone doing? Why are we not getting to where we need to go? Let's get there faster. And from a day-to-day perspective, people complain about these things. You might have heard these around your offices, right? The left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. Do you really know where you're going, where your team's going, where your department's going, where your business unit is going, where your entire company is going? Is everyone really aligned on the same page for tomorrow, next week, or the next 6 months? And then, you go to a conference like this and you come back with 1,000 awesome ideas that you want to make happen. How come you can't start those tomorrow? What existing commitments do you have that you have to wrap up before you can move on to the new and shiny and awesome? And those are really some of the things that we set out to start tackling really as a result of last year's Atlassian Summit. That's been my main focus over the last year, is how to keep this company moving forward. And when folks first start tackling these problems, they think about things like Gantt Charts. Well, I hate Gantt Charts. They create a very top-down culture in an organization where this thing gets created by one or two people, and then an entire organization is just expected to execute on it. And that just doesn't work for us. I hate them. I don't want to be leading all innovative activities that our company does. I want to be corralling all the innovators that we have in our company and get them working together and moving in one direction. One person innovating pales in comparison to 80 if we're all looking at the same goal in mind. And so what we set out to create was what I'm here to talk about, which is our product roadmap dashboard. And we had very, very simple goals for this. We wanted top-down strategic direction. We wanted our executive team to basically say, these are the main goals that we want to accomplish in 2011 or 2012. And then give those to the rest of the company to come up with the initiatives and tactics that get us there. And these are very high-level things. These are enter this new market. This is, trim away what's causing us to become distracted and really focus on where we're good. We wanted this roadmap dashboard to be extremely transparent and extremely flexible. Anyone can read it, anyone can write it, and most importantly, anyone can execute on the initiatives in it to move our company forward. So what is it? That's what I'll give a quick screenshot, then we'll dive into some of the details. We'll go through the two examples. We'll look under the hood, and then I have to, once again, mention all of the code samples will be online, no scribbling. And these were all free open source plugins. There was no magic here. Everything was open source that I pulled in to make this happen, and the link at the end will get you started. So what does it look like? Well, here's what it is. We have 3 columns. And in these 3 columns, my goal is to visualize flow and state of efforts through the organization. Projects and efforts move from left to right here. And we have color coding to indicate which platform team is responsible for moving those initiatives forward. If we were to dive in a little bit closer and look at what's actually in these 3 columns, we'll start with the one on the left. This is what we're calling our next column. This is something that we know we want to do. We're just trying to figure out what it is and how we want to do it. These are writing our functional specifications, our technical specifications, soliciting user feedback, trying to find customers that would want to use some sort of product, trying to find internal folks that are having pain with something. We know we want to do it. We know we want to get in that direction, but how do we actually do it? That's our next state for any of our projects or efforts. What was in the middle column? Well, this is active. We know what it is. We know how we want to do it. And now we are doing it. People are coming in the morning and they're saying to themselves, my number one goal today is to move this project or effort forward. Not at 4 p.m., not multitasking, but really coming in the morning and making this one effort one step closer towards completion. We are fully executing on whatever that project or effort is. And then finally, we have this last column that we're displaying called just finished, but it's still consuming our time. Just because something's feature complete, or just because something's running on our servers out in production, doesn't mean we're not paying attention to it anymore. There's still things there that prevent us from moving on to the next thing. It may be we're trying to analyze logs and see how well this thing is performing, how well is it scaling. It may be that we're working with customers on a beta. Maybe we're still working on product launch activities, but our organization is still spending resources day in and day out to make this thing successful. So even though it was launched, we still are paying attention to it. And if you put all these things together, you basically get a Kanban style chart where we're flowing from left to right to the organization, and anyone walking through our office can say, what's this team doing? What's that team doing? And we can see where these different projects are in their different states through the organization. And what's important here to note is that these aren't just engineering efforts, right? These are also marketing efforts. These are also product efforts. They're also operational efforts. They're the tactics and initiatives that support the goals for our organization and our alignment on where we want to go. But this is only half of our dashboard. The flow and state is only half. The other half is a very, very simplified version of a Gantt chart. And it shows us duration of our efforts and sequence. It's a very simple, when do we expect it to be done by? And how many months do we think we're going to be spending resources on that? And if we dive in a little bit, we can see it's just a series of columns that represent what months we're going to be working on an effort. Seeing a green button, a green icon in there indicates, yes, we are paying attention to it. Not seeing one means, hey, that's not on the Gantt chart. We're not paying attention to it yet. And then it's just sorted by the expected completion date. So we know what sequence these things are going to roughly appear in. And now we're going to look at kind of two of the concrete examples for how this sort of dashboard is used. And the first one is about staying in the know, which was our number one goal. And the example we're going to walk through is a new top-down idea that we want to run with. And the second example we're going to look at is really about empowering collaboration and how we can make sure that cross-departmental boundaries get crossed appropriately so we can keep everyone moving in the direction we want to go in. But first, example one. So a new top-down idea we want to run with. So let's say that we're in this dashboard. All right. We're looking at all of the efforts that we have underway from left to right. Is how these projects move through this pipeline. And if we look down here in this bottom left, we have add a new Dynect project. Dynect is one of our platforms. It's what powers Twitter and Zappos and so on and so forth. And if we were to click on that, we would get a very simple add page. No magic here, just add page. And we can enter in what we want this project or effort to be. In this case, it's answered DNS queries via carrier pigeon. One of our important customers, Twitter, called us and said, we're really into birds. We love birds, but there's no DNS packets being carried by birds, and that's not cool. We need to fix that. And this is a feature request, right? This is an account manager saying, hey, my customer needs this to be successful. We investigate. We'll take a look. If we add that page to Confluence, the next thing that we see is a very simple form where we can enter in some metadata around this feature request or this project or this effort. And what's really important to kind of understand here as I'm going through this is you're probably doing similar things already in Confluence to at least track what people are asking for and what they are and kind of fleshing out some of the details. And really all we're adding here is a little bit of metadata that can help build up these top-level views. But we're not really changing what you're already putting into Confluence with your specifications and your user stories and your other details. We're just adding quick metadata like a 2-sentence overview. Just give me a 2-sentence overview that I can pull into a summary page, right? And here it's one of our biggest customers has announced their upcoming support in April 2012 for IP over AV carriers. We'll need to support DNS queries via IPOAC as specified in RFC 1149. And if folks think I totally made this up, that RFC actually exists. It came out April 1st, about 15 years ago. And it threw a lot of technical folks up in arms that they were so joking with the RFC system, but it's there nonetheless. And what we're trying to capture here is, so this metadata surrounds our existing process for using Confluence and our existing collaboration in Confluence. And the other pieces we're capturing include who's going to be working on it, right? I'm calling implementation lead here, but it's really who's the go-to person that knows the most about it. If someone needs to ask a question, who can they go to? And they may or may not be a manager, but they know the most about this effort. And who's going to be assisting with this effort? And then we have current status there. And if we remember from the 3-column view that I was showing, this is where we're saying, what state are things in? And if you notice, there's 5 things here, not 3. We had the 3 before. We had next, active, and finished. I've added 2 more, 1 before and 1 after. Staging is the first one. All ideas start in the staging bin. It's our idea bin. It's where all the raw input comes in. It's where when an account manager has a feature request and they took it in over the phone, they could just hop into Confluence, fire this up, and enter in that feature request. It's where our internal teams come up with productivity improvements, and they start to flesh them out in here. The step that's added towards the end, archive, means we're no longer paying attention to it. If you remember, finished was all about, hey, it's out there, but we're still looking at it. Archive is we're no longer looking at it. So there's our 5 states through this Kanban chart. And then the final piece of metadata at the bottom there is the expected finish date. So April 1st, 2012 is when Twitter told us that they need to have this feature live. And gosh darn it, we're going to get it to them. If we scroll down a little bit in this form, this project details area, this is just wiki markup. This is all of the information that you're currently using Confluence for, all of your specs, all of your user stories. We've just surrounded it with these pieces of metadata. At the bottom here, this is how we're generating our quick overview Gantt chart view. We just select which radio buttons we expect to be working on this project, and it populates those top-level dashboards for us automatically. And if we were to save this page, this is what we see. Very quick links at the top for different areas we might want to jump to quickly in our metadata for the project. And if we scroll down, we had our details. We linked into the actual IP over ABN carriers protocol. We linked into the RFC that describes what's under the hood. And we started fleshing out our specifications, so on and so forth. But really what this builds down to, or boils down to, is getting this dashboard in front of our teams, our executives, our marketers, our developers, our operations staff, to see how everything is going to fit together to execute on our company's top-level goals. And to recap here, this is really how we display it. It's these 2 views that come hand in hand. We show flow and state with our Kanban view at top, and we show duration and sequence with our Gantt chart view at the bottom. And together, putting all these on one screen on a wall, you can walk by and see how things are going. So the key takeaways here. I'm not changing any of our product process that we already had. We're already using Confluence to track all this information, to collaborate all in this information. I didn't go into a lot of details of actually writing specs because that's kind of boring work. But we use things like Glyphy and Balsamic and so on and so forth to actually get that information in there. This is purely about the metadata that helps generate this top-level view of what's in there and how we can keep everything moving forward. And then we have it in these 2 views, flow and state, duration and sequence. So quick example 2. So a product release. This is where we start looking at more of the collaborative aspects. It's more than just code. It's more than just getting this code on the servers. If we go back into our product roadmap dashboard view, we can see at the top, I had a couple links that were for our different platform teams. So Dynact, our enterprise DNS team, DynDNS, our consumer DNS team, IG, SendLabs, product and operations, so on down the line. If I had clicked on this Dynact link up here at the top, I get the same exact view, but filtered into only that platform, right? So if this was all of our different colors for all of our different platform teams, with orange being Dynact and yellow being DynDNS, clicking on that view shows me just the orange. It's just Dynact. Now this platform team has their own focused view for exactly what they're doing to contribute moving the company forward. And if I scroll down here, I not only get that Kanban view, but I get the Gantt chart view for what's going on in this platform. And these 3 links here are change product status. This is a very, very quick move things from one step to another. If I click there, I get this quick checklist macro where I can move things from staging, next, active, finished, and archive down the line. The next link there, view Dynact staging area for projects. If our dashboard is only showing what we're committed to, actively doing, and just finished, we need a way to see, well, what's the idea bin, and what's the stuff that we did 3 months ago that's just totally done, right? And so that's our staging area right there. And the same thing for archive Dynex projects. That's a very dynamic portion of the page. And so what you notice here is in a product release, it's very, very easy to sip from a fire hose of ideas if you can get all the communication in Confluence. And you can make sure that the right people are involved in the right communications. Email just is information overload for these types of discussions. But in Confluence, the way we can watch pages and subscribe to things and really group things by how people are going to interact makes it very, very easy to get just the information that we need. And so what we're really looking for when it comes to collaboration is parallel but intelligently intertwined conversations. We want our engineers thinking about what is it and how do we build it, but we want our marketers and our business development staff and our account managers thinking, what is our go-to-market plan? And we think of this as almost, it's not one project, it's really two intelligently intertwined. We have one that we're going to run in Dynex, where our engineering team is going to do this IP over AVN carriers feature, and we have one project that we're going to run in product. We're going to coordinate all the marketing resources and intelligently intertwine these things. So what would it look like if I added a project into this dashboard for the launch efforts? Well, very, very similar. Add page, product launch for the Dyn Pigeon platform. We're going to make this thing see the light of day. And we're going to start discussions just by people watching that space and seeing that, hey, they might not be watching the engineering space because there's a lot of stuff in there that's not relevant to a marketer or not relevant to our account management team, but they're definitely watching the product space because that's stuff that we're coordinating, getting ready to go live. And so when they do that, they may see that, hey, we're starting something for Twitter, but maybe we could do something for Birdseye. What about Thunderbird or Chick-fil-A or Nestle, right? Let's start these conversations with these customers and see if there's relevant opportunities there. If what we're building for one customer will apply to these others. Not getting these people stuck in the details of how you actually make a DNS server do this, but looking at what opportunities are there and keeping in tune with the relevant information. Our marketing team, comes up with awesome logos for things. Here's going to be our Pigeon platform logo. We're going to put this on T-shirts. We're going to put it on boots. We're going to make it part of our launch events, right? We're going to look at what conferences are going to be relevant for this sort of thing. It's going to be things like Velocity or, the Ornithological Conference, maybe relevant opportunities to do these. And really it's about what capabilities are already in Confluence that we can leverage, but getting people looking at the right information. The commenting features are there, the watching features are there, but if we overload people with all of the information relevant to something, they're just going to lose interest. But if we can keep the right people looking at the right things, we get really, really good discussion and really, really good conversation. And all of that funnels back into our high-level roadmap view, where we'll have one project running through the Dynex platform for this launch and one running through the product team for this launch. And we can see how they relate in a top-level view. So the key takeaways for my second example here. Well, really, it's about leveraging the collaboration functionality already in Confluence, getting targeted conversation for the folks that need it, and keeping everyone in the loop on the relevant portions. So now comes the really interesting part, the under the hood, and how all of this stuff comes together, because there was no magic here. We make extensive use of labels. I'll show a little bit about that. Customware came out with some awesome open source plugins, the linking, scaffolding, reporting, and composition plugins. Bob Swift, is Bob in here by any chance? That'd be cool if he was. The man is absolutely amazing. The plugins that he comes up with, the table and cache were used here, but I use many, many more of his plugins in our instance. jQuery user macro, and once again, all of these are free. And let's show a little bit about how this works under the hood. So labels. We make extensive use of labels to describe three things in this dashboard. The first is just a static keyword called project. That just means it's relevant to the dashboard, right? That just means that it's something that this dashboard needs to pay attention to. And so it's just a static string that's applied to any page in the dashboard. The second category is what we're calling the team label or the platform label. This is who's going to be working on it. The Dynex team, the product team, the DynDNS team, the SendLabs team. So it's the who. And then finally, the status label tell us what state these things are in. So staging, next, active, finished, and archive. And the way these things get edited, if we remember back, we had this drop-down view in my form where users could very quickly select what state things are in. And it will automatically remove the previous label and apply the new one, which was kind of a neat trick. And that dictates what column things will appear in the dashboard, or what column these different projects and efforts will appear in the dashboard. For going down into the filtered view, By having Dynect applied there, we're showing only the Dynect projects, so that team can stay focused in their dashboard that sits in their work area, and we have different versions in the different teams' work areas. And that's it for the labels. Linking plugin. So the next piece of this is how we're actually going to add something to the dashboard. And if we remember from looking at the zoomed in view, we had this add a new platform project link. And what this is really doing under the hood is it's grabbing a template and it's saying just create a new page with that template. The pieces to look into here, and this is probably the most detailed one I'm going to go into just because it kind of sets the stage for a number of things. The macro is add page. That pulls in right in from the linking plugin macro. We specify a template. That view that I showed with the forms is all part of this template. The labels, it automatically applies the appropriate labels here. So if I was adding a project from the Dynect view, it would be adding Dynect in our static string project. Live equals true. This is a really cool feature of the scaffolding plugin where if I make any changes to the templates in the future, those are automatically pulled in to all of my pages that were built using that template. So I don't have to go back and retrofit pages if I wanted to change ordering of stuff or add new fields or so on and so forth. And we have a parent page where everything is going to start and live, and it's just a place for these pages to live in Confluence. So if I click that link and what actually happened, remember we had that add page, we filled in a name for it, but really under the hood, all it was doing was creating that page with this content. Live template project. That's all that those pages are. And the way everything comes together for the dashboard is it's that template that we create, that project template, plus the metadata that we enter in using the forms, right? Setting things like who's the implementation lead, what's the status of this project, what's the expected completion date. Those combined together render that project page, that view that I showed where it was the actual details of that project. And all of the details for how that template works I have in my blog entry because that's way too detailed for here, but it is something you can just copy and paste into your Confluence instance and get up and running. So that's kind of how the data gets captured under the hood. Now, how does the data get rendered into those cool views that we showed for Kanban and Gantt? For the Kanban view, we use the section and column macro to divide this page into 3 columns. And then, very simply, the content by label. Remember, those labels dictated what platforms these projects belong to. That was how that piece of metadata got tracked. They also tracked what state these things were in. That's how that metadata got tracked. And so the content by label macro gives us these 3 columns so that the column on the left is only showing things tagged next, the one in the middle is only showing things tagged active, and the one on the right is only showing things tagged finished. Our Gantt chart view uses the reporting and composition plugins to grab what state those radio buttons were in and render them in a table. So however we asserted those radio buttons on that project page, those get pulled in, and we can display a nice green bullet here to give people at a glance what month projects are going to be active in. And then the finish date was just where we set that in the metadata details of that project, and it gets pulled in as well. And the little dirty trick that I have, this gets ugly. And it's because I was absolutely adamant about giving people a very, very clear view about what belonged where. And if you just threw all of this into Confluence today, as it stands, you'd get your columns rendering like you see on the left there. And that doesn't really help anyone. Well, what we're able to do to get that fancy coloring and those fancy icons and trimming down information that we don't need is doing little user interface hacking. And it's the jQuery macro that's looking at that page at runtime on the client side and stripping out what's irrelevant, adding colors as appropriate, swapping icons, and that's how we're able to get that really, really easy to understand view in our different projects. So we don't have just a pile of information to wrestle with. And what's really, really cool about some of these capabilities is when you start to see different projects coming together that align and move things in a certain direction and starting to see more commenting on these things in the activity stream and more people pushing for different sorts of features, you really get a sense about where things are coming from and how people are asking for improvements to your products or to your platforms. You know, is something coming through the woodwork because it's the silent a majority that really needs something they just haven't asked for? Is it that very vocal minority that's clogging up your forums and asking for, why don't you have this feature? Why don't I have this feature? We have things in this dashboard that aggregate, how much are these deals worth, right? Are these the small customers that we're talking about and having to change what order projects get done in and trying to reorganize our roadmaps? Are these big customers, but there's only one or two of them, and we have to wrestle with that? So trying to understand the balance between we have many small customers and we want to move something, or one or two large ones, or one or two very vocal ones. That's one of the challenges that we get to solve with this product roadmap dashboard, by giving everyone the ability to see where all this information is. Because not everyone in our organization has a Salesforce account, right? All of our CRM data is in there. But in our details views, we can show people, at a snapshot, who's requesting something. Not everyone has access to our support queue. There's a lot of customer confidential information in there, but we could still aggregate those pieces together here and show to folks, so on and so forth. Last part that I wanted to show under the hood was the caching plugin. This really made it possible to do all this stuff. When I first launched this effort, probably about 4 or 5 months ago, the thing just fell on the floor. It was awful. There's so much information getting pulled in from the reporting plugin, scaffolding plugin, so on and so forth, that to render these dashboard pages takes a long time. We since upgraded our infrastructure internally where we run Confluence, and it got much better. But the way I survived interim was by using the caching plugin, which is really cool. You just surround your content in Confluence with cache, and you say how frequently you want it to invalidate. And show refresh and date just gives you that view at the top left, where if anyone clicked that, it would just invalidate the server-side cache. So if you have pages that are taking forever to load, throw this on there, and it's a good stopgap solution until you can upgrade your infrastructure or trim down things that are really slowing you down. And now the magic part, the link for how to get started. So this is standingonthebrink.com is my blog. The entry that's on there on the homepage is all of the details for this, a copy of the slides, and all of the templates that you can pull into your Confluence instance, discussion on what you might need to tweak or what's ready to go as it stands. And if you need to reach out to me, I'm happy to help. My email is cvw@dyn.com, and my Twitter handle is cvonwallenstein, and I'd be happy to take any questions from folks. Yes, sir.
What about Greenhopper? I mean, it does seem like you've sort of rebuilt some aspects of Greenhopper within Confluence. Did you consider using that instead to achieve this result?
The question was Greenhopper and why go this route instead of Greenhopper. Greenhopper was the inspiration. In our organization, we don't have everything on Atlassian products. We have a lot of legacy stuff that we have. And I wanted the ability to give top-level views to folks in this Kanban style chart with what tools we already had available and what workflows already worked for people. Slowly over time, hey, that may work for us. But at the moment, we needed the ability to get this visibility into what's going on now. And so this was a very quick way to wrap around what processes people were already using, because we already had 100% Confluence adoption. And so by adding these little pieces of metadata, we got this at very low cost, where if we went through and retrofitted kind of our all the other existing systems we have and retrained people, especially while we're trying to grow so quickly, I just can't see us doing it. But I would like to get there at some point. And it's very useful for folks that aren't developers, right? Support personnel, marketers, business development folks, account managers. I mean, if you guys have your account managers working in Jira, that's awesome. I would love to get there, but that's not where our team is. I have them in Confluence, and they love Confluence. So I've really delivered to who my audience was internally. Yes.
I noticed that you have forms. That's something new to me. So you can create forms. Is it a macro that you're using?
That is the scaffolding plugin by Customware, and it is awesome, but extremely difficult to use. And if there's any Customware folks in here, all right, when you run into them in the hallway, say make scaffolding easier to use. It is really difficult. But these examples that I have are a saving grace, because a lot of the complexity that I ran into trying to set these things up were on some of the basic concepts for like how does a form work and how do you read the data back in. And just by having that one form there for, hey, who's working on a project, right? That information was pulled in from Confluence groups. I didn't have to go manually configure that, right? Those dates are automatically generated. So there's a lot of powerful capabilities in there. Hopefully it gets easier for everyone to start leveraging those, but this is a good start. Any other questions? Yes?
Just a question with your use of labels. Was that a strategic decision to actually take the input from the user and apply it as a label so things are a little more searchable?
The question was on the labels, and was it a strategic decision to use the labels in that way? And I'd be taking way too much credit if I said yes. I knew how some of those macros worked for working with labels, and I knew that we had a bit of adoption in our organization for how to actually tag documents, and people each wore their wiki gardener hat every now and then to clean up the labels and retag things, so there was already some momentum forward for labels, and so it was kind of a natural fit. But in all honesty, it just worked really, really easy from a technical perspective to make that functionality happen. Whereas if I had to do it another route, I don't know how easy that would have been. Yes? That's discussed in my blog entry, and it's another use of the jQuery macro, where it's literally JavaScript looks to add an event handler for when someone touches that field, and on run, we'll remove the label from the bottom of the page. So another dirty, nasty hack, but it gives us the workflow that we want. Yes? I go in every 2 months and update them at the moment. I would love to make that fully automated, but as it is, I just go in and in the template, drop out the 2 columns on the left, add 2 more columns on the right, and call it a day. If anyone figures out how to do that automated, I'll buy them a couple beers. How many 10. That's pretty compelling. I'm sorry, I missed that? Very cool. I did look at the Gantt chart plugin initially, and it didn't have the ability to just kind of seamlessly wrap around what we already had as a process, because we already had people drawing kind of tables like that, right? We had people just manually creating tables and moving little X's like through the table columns to make these things happen. So just by having a tiny, tiny tweak on what people are already doing, we got that flexibility. Whereas if I put in something more featureful from a manageability perspective, I might not have gotten the same adoption. But I would love to see how some of that stuff has progressed and works now. This might be my last question. Yes?
And then how are you pulling in the individual row that's on the individual document associated with the project to create the one consolidated Gantt chart that pulls them all together?
That's the beauty of the reporting plugin. So the reporting and scaffolding plugins work hand in hand. Scaffolding plugin is what metadata do I want and how do I enter it. Reporting plugin is how do I pull it back out. And making those two work together seamlessly was a bit of a challenge. But this example will be a good starting point for folks that want to make them work in their own instances of Confluence. Yes? I hope nothing, but I'm not that naive. No idea. Hopefully I'll get a preview instance of it and I'll be able to make this stuff work there. But you know, I'm preparing for breakage. You know, it's inevitable. But I want that. I want that wiki editor. I really do. Good. Good. Cool. All right. Thank you, everyone. Standingonthebrink.com. Look forward to your questions. Thank you.